Okay, this is the first video lecture of the year, and it's for lesson 1-1. So we're starting activity 1, or you can think of it as chapter 1. And activity 1 is called geometric figures. So we're going to be talking about and introducing some geometric figures in geometry that are pretty important. So for lesson 1-1, it's titled Basic Geometric Figures. Okay, so our basic geometric figures are the ones that we pretty much really very much need to actually do anything in geometry. So that's where we'll start. Let's begin. So in geometry, we have some words like point, line, and plane, and these are undefined. What it means to be undefined terms are the basic ideas that you can use to build the definitions of all other figures in geometry. Okay, so the reason they are undefined is because we do not have any other terms or anything. We know nothing about geometry, so we're trying to build up from the bottom. Although you can't define undefined terms, it is important to have a general description of their meaning. So we can't define them, but we can kind of describe what they do, I guess. You know what I mean? So these terms are essentially the building blocks of geometry. Every definition in geometry will build from the three undefined terms: point, line, and plane. Okay, so our three undefined terms, like we said, are point, line, and plane. And from there, we can build every other definition that we know in geometry. And that's very important. It's pretty cool. But we know they're undefined because we don't have anything to define them from. And you will need to know these three undefined terms. So first we'll start off with points. So a point indicates a location and has no size. What this means is that it's only indicates location, meaning that it just tells us where something is, okay? You've seen what a point is before in algebra. A point is going to look like a dot, okay? It's going to look like a dot. All right. You've seen it in algebra when we are on the coordinate plane. You have a point that tells us where those coordinates tell its location, so that's how we signify what a point is. But how do we name a point? There's one way to name a point, and it's named with a capital letter. So when you're seeing points, you'll most likely see a capital letter next to it, and then you'll very easy to name a point. So let's look at an example. I have this dot here, and I have a capital letter P next to it. I know it is a point because dots are points. So how do I name this? We know it's named with a capital letter, so we're going to put the word point in front of it, and it's called point P. As simple as that. Capital letter P though, okay? Do not put lowercase letters to name points. All right, our next undefined term is a line. A line is represented by a straight path that extends in two opposite directions without end and has no thickness. Okay, so lines now tell us direction. So points tell us location, and then lines tell us direction. How do you are you able to know if it's a line or what? It's going to have, you know what a line looks like, right? But the big thing about a line is it has arrows on both ends, and those two arrows represent the path extending in two opposite directions. Okay, and I will tell you the only two things you need to create a line are 2 points. 2 points is how you create a line. Okay, you have 2 points, and then the direction between to go from one point to the other, and then on and on and on forever is how we signify what a line is. Okay, some examples of lines: the x-axis and the y-axis in the coordinate plane. Okay, so how do we name a line? There are 2 ways to name a line. Okay, first way, it can be named using any 2 points on the line in any order with a line symbol, which is just this little line with 2 arrows heads on it, drawn above. So that little symbol is going to be drawn above. And like I said, we only need 2 points to define a line, and you only need 2 points to name the line. And remember, they can be written in any order. But that's just the first way we can name a line. we can also name a line using a lowercase letter, okay? A lowercase letter. So if you see, you may see like in a diagram, a lowercase letter written next to a line. That's because we can name a line with a lowercase letter. Okay, so example. I've got this line right here with 2 points on it, and then I have a little lowercase letter m right there, okay? So there are 3 possible names for this line. First one, I'm going to go using what we our first way to name a line. I'm going to say, can we call it line AB? And notice that it has that line with 2 arrowheads on it drawn above. The other way, we're using number 1 in our how to name it. We could also name it line BA, because remember, we can do this in any order. So either of those would be fine. But if we want to use our lowercase letter m, we could call it line M. Okay? And those are the 3 possible names for this line. All right, for a plane is a little bit different, okay? A plane is represented by a flat surface that extends without end and has no thickness. So what I want you to do is I want you to imagine a piece of paper that you can put in front of you, okay? It's like a square, right? It's 2-dimensional, but instead of the paper ending at the boundaries of the paper, it goes on and forever, in every different direction. Sorry. We also want to say that a plane contains infinitely many lines. So let's look at what a plane would be represented by. You'll usually see them like this, okay? But the plane does not end at these boundaries. It actually goes on and on forever. There's not going to be arrows pointing it out, but that's just what it signifies, okay? Okay. So a plane goes on and on forever. It's just like a flat surface that goes on and on forever in every direction, okay? So, how do we name a plane? Again, we have 2 different ways that we can name a plane. The first way is named using any 3 points in the plane that are not on the same line. That's important. Not on the same line. But they can be in any order. Okay? So, not on the same line is important. We call this, they are not collinear. That's what that means. Or we can name a plane using a cursive capital letter. Alright. So since we name a plane with 3 points, there are many possible names for a plane. So let's look at our example and I'll show you how that works. So we have this plane right here. See, it kind of looks like a parallelogram. We have 3 points inside this plane, and we have a capital cursive Q in the top right corner. So first, let's name our plane, give all the possible names of this plane using 3 letters, okay? First one I'm going to go with is plane FGH. But then I could also name it, if I want to start with F again, I can name it plane FHG, or plane GFH, or plane GHF, or plane HGF, or plane HFG. Okay, those are all the possible names we can name it using 3 letters. And then lastly, we can name it plane Q. All right. 7 different names for that plane right there. So I expect you to be able to do this as well, okay? All right, moving on. Those are our 3 undefined terms. Now we can define some other terms using these undefined terms, okay? So next, we have 2 more I want to define now. We're going to define a line segment. Okay, notice the word line in there, so it's probably going to be a part of a line, okay? So, line segment is a part of a line that consists of 2 endpoints and all points between them. So, 2 endpoints. Endpoints mean that the line does not go any farther than those 2 points. Okay, you start at one and go to the other. So it looks something like that. So you can see how it is a part of a line. It's straight. It's a straight line, right? But it doesn't go on and on forever in both directions like that. Okay. You'll be doing segments a lot, so this is something we really need to know, and we need to know how to name them. So how do we name it? It's named using the 2 endpoints in any order with a segment symbol drawn above. So this is important. You can only use the 2 endpoints to name a segment. Okay? They can be in any order, but only use the 2 endpoints. And then you draw it this little segment symbol, which is like a dash above it. No arrowheads on that. So our example, we have a segment right here where we have two endpoints, S and T. There are two ways to name this one, segment ST and segment TS. Okay, notice that the line above those two names does not have any arrowheads, and that is on purpose. Okay, next we have a ray. A ray is a part of a line that consists of one endpoint and all the points of the line on one side of the endpoint. What this means is that you'll see a ray looking like this. One endpoint, and then the ray will go on and on forever in the other direction. That's supposed to be an arrowhead. Then you'll usually name it with 2 points, okay? So, how do we name it? Again, like I just said, it's named using the endpoint and one other point with a ray symbol drawn above. Very important, the endpoint is always listed first, okay? So, that's important. There's one way to name a ray if you only given 2 points on it like that. Let's look at our example. Okay, we have a ray with an endpoint M and then another point N that lies on that ray, okay? So, our one way to name this, because we don't have any other points to find on this, would be called ray MN. Notice that the M came first because M is the endpoint. So it has to come first since it's the endpoint. Okay, I want to give you ask you a question. What if I had another point right here called, say, A? Would MA be a valid name for this ray? And the answer is yes, because the only thing that has to be first and has to be in there is the endpoint. You can choose any other point along that ray to name it, okay? So that would have been a valid name for the ray shown here, okay? All right, cool. Let's move on. Do some examples, guys. So for P1 through P4, we want to identify each geometric figure and then give all possible names for the figures. This looks kind of like what your notes page looks like. So P1. We've got this figure right here. I'm going to tell you this figure is a segment, okay, because it doesn't have any arrowheads. It does go on and on forever in any direction. So how do we name a segment? We've got two different ways. We can name it segment QP. Remember the bar above it. Do not forget that. Or we can name it segment PQ. Okay, P2. We've got this figure with two arrowheads on the side. So if it has two arrowheads, we know it's a line. So the two different names for this one could be line NC with the two arrowhead line drawn above it. That's important, don't forget that. Or line CN. Okay. P3. We've got a plane. All right, with 3 points inside, and then we also have a cursive capital letter M in the top left right corner. This one's very similar to the example we had in the previous slides. We have 7 different names we can do. We know it's a plane, okay? So our possible names are plane BGT, plane BTG, plane GTB, plane GBT, plane TGB, plane TBG, and then plane M. Okay? The hardest one on here, P4, I have a dot with a capital D next to it. This is obviously a point, and then the only name for this would be point D. Okay, hardest one on the problem right there on the page. Moving on, P5. We've got this ray right here. Is ray SR a possible name for the figure at the right and explain? So, without even looking at the diagram, if I see ray SR like that, I am going to assume that the endpoint is S. But by looking at my figure again, my endpoint's R. So is this a possible name? No, it is not a possible name. The figure is a ray with endpoint R. The endpoint must come first when naming a ray, so the correct name would be ray RS. Okay, that's important, that's important, that's important. You have to have the endpoint first, okay? That's very, 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 very important. So P6. We have a line here, and we have Caleb and Jen who are fighting about something. Caleb says that the figure below can be named, or above in this case actually, it can be named line KJ. Jen says the figure above or below can be named JL. Who's correct? Explain. So here's my thinking. Is K a point on this line? Yes. Okay, cool. Is J a point on the line? Yes. All right, awesome. Is L a point on the line? Yes as well. So how many points on the line do we need to name a line? Just 2. So both of these names are correct because points K, J, and L are all points on the line, and a line can be named with any 2 points on the line. So they are both correct. All right, last example for this section, P7. We've got this figure right here. How many rays are contained in the figure, and then we want to name them all. So this one's a bit tricky, okay? I want you to go ahead and pause this video and see if you can figure this one out first before I do it, okay? Be careful, be careful, be careful. All right, so how many rays are contained in the figure? 5 rays. If you put 7 rays, we'll explain why it's not 7, okay? So let's go ahead and name them all together. Names are ray BA is one, with B being the endpoint, and A going that way. That's a ray, sure is. Okay, how about another one? Ray BC, just go in the opposite direction now, with endpoint B going that way. That'll work. Next, CA. So we have endpoint C now, and going towards A. And A is a point on that ray, another point. We could also have named this CB, because look at that, B also is on that ray. Remember, the only thing that matters really is the endpoint, okay? You can pick any other point on there. So those are the 2 names. If you had said that CB and CA were different rays, then that is incorrect. They are different names, but they're the same ray. So similarly, we could say AC or call it AB as well. Those are the same ray. And then our last one we have is ray BD. Okay, B being the endpoint, and it goes up to infinity with D being a point on that ray. Okay, that one's kind of tricky. So I hope you realize why it's not 7 and why it is 5. Okay, awesome. Moving on. We're going to talk about an angle now. Okay, an angle is formed by 2 rays with the same endpoint. Okay, so if I have 2 rays, the rays are the sides of the angle, and then the endpoint is the vertex of the angle. So they have the same endpoint, and that endpoint is called a vertex. So let's see what that looks like. If I have a ray, okay, going on and on like that, but then I know it has the same endpoint, okay? I have another ray right here. The rays are called the sides of the angle, and this is our angle right here. We usually signify an angle kind of like this, with a little hump like that. That is an angle. I'm sure you've heard of what an angle is before, hopefully. And notice that they have the same endpoint. This is called the vertex, and then these are the sides. Okay? Very good. So now we have that. Let's talk about how to name an angle. There are 3 different ways to name an angle. First, an angle can be named using the angle symbol and a number. So the angle symbol is this little L that's kind of bent down like that, okay? Angle symbol is that. So sometimes you might see an angle with a 1 in the middle like that. We call it angle 1, okay? All right, next. We can name an angle using the angle symbol and the vertex of the angle. But you need to be very careful when doing this because some angles, you might have two angles that share the same vertex. And that's a little troublesome, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, using the angle and then the vertex of the angle. The vertex, remember, is just the point that connects the two rays, okay? It's the shared endpoint. You can also name an angle using the angle symbol and 3 points on the angle. So, this is important. The first point is on one side of the angle. The second point is the vertex. Second point is the vertex of the angle. Always, when we're doing naming an angle with 3 letters, the second point is always the vertex. And then the third point is on the other side of the angle. So those two outside points are on either side of the vertex, okay? Don't name them with them both on the same side of the vertex. So let's look at an example. I've got this angle right here, and I've got a bunch of different letters and everything up here, okay? So first I'm going to name this angle 3. Okay, that's using the first way to name it. We have that 3 there, and I can name that angle 3 very easily. I could also name it angle Y, because Y is the vertex of the angle. And then now we're going to go over how to name it with the 3 points. So we know my Y is the vertex of my angle. So that will be in the middle of the two other letters that we're going to be naming our angle with, always, okay? So we could name this angle XYZ, X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z, or we can name it, go the other way, Z, Y, X. That's what we've got. Those are the 4 names for this angle, okay? Do not try to name this XZY because Z is not the vertex of this angle. That middle letter has to be the vertex of the angle. Okay, so let's do some problems or some examples, and then we'll be finished. Give all possible names for the given angle. Okay, so look, a little bit different on this one. We've got 2 points on one side of the angle. Okay, so that's going to give us a few more possibilities. First thing first, do I see a number? No, so I can't name it with a number. But I do know my vertex is C. Okay, so vertex is C. All right, so how about angle C? We can do that because we can name it by the vertex. Now let's move on to using 3 letters. How about angle SCN? Okay, that works. S and N are on either side of the vertex, and C is the middle because it's the vertex. Or angle SCF, also because F is also another point on that side of the on one side of the angle. So that's a very valid name as well. You could name it angle NCS, and then our last one would be angle FCS. Just notice that C is always in the middle of those 4 possible names because C is the vertex. All right, moving on. Number 9. Explain why angle S is not an appropriate name for angle 1. Here's our picture. So, angle S. Let's think about that. What S is the vertex of angle 1, correct? It is. And then S is also the vertex of angle 2. So if I call angle 1 angle S, how do I know if I'm referring to angle 1 or angle 2? You don't. Point S is the vertex for both angle 1 and angle 2. The name angle S could refer to either angle 1 or angle 2. So because of that, we cannot use angle S to name either angle. Okay? So be careful with that when naming angles that are butted up against each other like that, okay? Very important, very, very, very important. If they share the same vertex, then you cannot use the vertex to name the angle, okay? It's a general rule of thumb. I don't really ever like to name an angle with a vertex, okay? You won't see me doing that much. Most of the time you'll see me either naming it with a letter, with a number, or with 3 letters, okay? 3 letters is honestly the best way in my opinion, because it tells you, first of all, it tells you what the vertex is because it's that middle letter. Anyway. All right, P10. Is angle FED a possible name for the figure at the right, or below, right in this case? FED. What do we think? So if I look at this name right here, the letter E is in the middle. That tells me that E would be the vertex of the angle. But if I look down here, angle D is the vertex. So, no, not a possible name for the figure. If the angle is named with 3 letters, then the vertex of the angle must be in the middle of the 3 letters. The vertex of the angle is point D, so correct names would be either angle EDF or angle FDE. Okay. Give the other possible appropriate names for angle 2 right here. So let's think. We could name this. Since remember we cannot name it angle S since what we looked at in P9. Okay. So we're going to be, all our possible names are going to be using 3 letters. And remember, S will be in the middle. So we can name this angle TSU. Okay. Angle UST. Do we have any more we can name this? Think about it. The answer is no. Those are our only 2 names for this angle. Okay. And we're finished. That's all for lesson 1-1, guys. So if you have any questions, like if you were absent and you have any questions from what this video went over, please email me for sure before you try to attempt any homework, okay? Or you can go ahead and attempt the homework using what you know here. So, lesson 1-1, homework is posted on OneNote and Blackboard. Your link to submit the homework will also be on OneNote and Blackboard. Remember, this is your first time submitting homework, you will take pictures of your homework once you finished, and you'll upload those pictures using the link mentioned above, okay? You'll find that either on OneNote, again, or on Blackboard. Both are possible ways for you to find them. It's due the following day by 3:10 p.m. or you will receive at most half credit. So just remember my homework policy. If you turn it in after 3:10, you will only receive at most half credit, and I will be grading it like a test. Okay? Remember, if you turn it in on time, I grade for effort and completion mostly. But if you turn it in late, I grade it like a test, meaning if you do not have the work, you do not get the credit. If your work does not justify your answer, you will not get the credit. So just warning you now, okay? And you would only get at most half credit. So it is very, I would recommend getting your homework turned in on time. Okay. Thank you. And again, if you have any questions, please email me.